I sat at the law office, my hands shaking as I stared at the papers in front of me. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, cleared his throat nervously. "I'm sorry, Tara. Your grandmother's will has been updated recently." My heart pounded. Grandma Rose had always promised I'd inherit her beautiful Victorian house. It was where I spent every summer, learning to bake her famous apple pies and listening to stories about our family's history. "What do you mean, updated?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mr. Patterson adjusted his glasses. "Your Uncle Alexandra is now the sole beneficiary of all properties and assets. You've been removed from the will entirely." The room felt like it was spinning. Uncle Alexandra? The same man who never visited Grandma, who only called when he needed money. This had to be some terrible mistake. Enjoy our revenge stories? Subscribe, like, and drop your location in the comments. I stumbled out of the law office, my mind racing. How could Grandma Rose cut me out completely? We were so close. She taught me everything about cooking, gardening, and taking care of the old house. I was the one who spent weekends helping her with repairs. Uncle Alexandra lived 3 states away and barely knew Grandma's favorite color, let alone how to maintain her property. Something felt terribly wrong about this whole situation. I called my best friend Mia from the parking lot. "You won't believe what just happened," I said, fighting back tears. "Alexandra got everything and I got nothing." "That's impossible," Mia replied. "Your grandma loved you more than anyone. There has to be an explanation." But what explanation could there be? The will was signed and official. My dreams of preserving Grandma's memory in that house were shattered. Or were they? Don't miss more revenge stories. Subscribe, like, and comment your city. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the last time I saw Grandma Rose. She seemed perfectly normal, maybe a little tired, but her mind was sharp as ever. She had even mentioned wanting to teach me how to restore the old hardwood floors next summer. Why would she suddenly change her mind about leaving me the house? It made no sense. I decided to call Uncle Alexandra the next morning. Maybe he could explain what happened. When he answered, his voice sounded surprisingly cheerful. "Oh, Tara. I heard you were at the lawyer's office yesterday. Don't worry, kiddo. I'll take good care of the old place." "But Alexandra," I said carefully, "I don't understand why Grandma changed the will. Did she say anything to you about it?" There was a pause. "Well, you know how elderly people can be. They change their minds about things. Maybe she thought I'd be better at handling property matters." His answer felt hollow and rehearsed. I couldn't accept Alexandra's explanation. Something was definitely wrong. I decided to visit Mrs. Anderson, Grandma's elderly neighbor who had been her friend for 40 years. If anyone knew what really happened, it would be her. Mrs. Anderson invited me in for tea, her eyes sad. "I was wondering when you'd come by, dear. I've been worried about you since the funeral." "Mrs. Anderson, did Grandma ever mention changing her will? Did she seem confused or pressured by anyone lately?" The old woman's face darkened. "Actually, yes. About 2 months before she passed, your Uncle Alexandra started visiting more frequently. He brought some man with him several times, someone in a fancy suit who claimed to be helping with her financial planning." My heart sank. What kind of man? I never caught his name, but he drove a black car and always carried a briefcase. Rose seemed upset after their visits. She told me she felt pressured about something, but wouldn't say what. Now I was certain something fishy had happened. Subscribe for more powerful revenge stories. Like, comment, and share your location. Mrs. Anderson's words haunted me for days. I couldn't stop thinking about this mysterious man in the fancy suit. Who was he, and what did he want with Grandma Rose? I decided to do some detective work. First, I called the nursing home where Grandma had spent her final weeks. The nurse who cared for her, Helen, remembered me from my daily visits. "Your grandmother talked about you constantly," Helen said warmly. "She was so proud of you and excited about teaching you more about the house." Helen, did my Uncle Alexandra visit her here? Or anyone else she didn't usually see? "Oh yes, Alexandra came by a few times with another man. They always asked to speak with her privately." After their visits, Rose seemed agitated and confused. She kept saying something about papers she didn't understand. My suspicions were growing stronger. It sounded like Alexandra and his mysterious friend had been pressuring a sick elderly woman to change her will. But how could I prove it? I knew I needed help, so I convinced Mia to come with me to Grandma's house. Alexandra had given me 1 week to collect any personal items I wanted before he put the house on the market. Walking through those familiar rooms felt like losing Grandma all over again. Everything smelled like her lavender perfume and homemade bread. But I forced myself to focus on finding evidence. What exactly are we looking for? Mia asked as we climbed the creaky stairs to Grandma's bedroom. Anything that might show Alexandra pressured her into changing the will. Maybe she kept records or notes about their meetings. We searched through drawers and closets, finding old photo albums and letters, but nothing that seemed helpful. Then Mia called out from the study, "Tara, come look at this." She was standing by Grandma's old wooden desk, holding a small appointment book. "Look at these entries from March." My eyes widened as I read. Alexandra plus lawyer. House papers written in Grandma's shaky handwriting. The appointment book was our first real clue. I flipped through the pages, finding more concerning entries. Alexandra called upset about money appeared several times, along with lawyer visit, don't understand, and feel pressured scared. My heart ached reading Grandma's worried notes. She had clearly been frightened and confused by Alexandra's visits. But I needed more concrete evidence to challenge the will. "Let's check her filing cabinet," I suggested. Grandma was always organized and kept careful records of everything. In the bottom drawer, we found a folder labeled Important Documents. Inside were insurance papers, tax records, and, wait! There was a copy of an older will dated just 6 months ago. In this version, I was listed as the sole inheritor of the house. "This proves she didn't want to change the will," Mia said excitedly. But as I read further, my blood ran cold. There was also a letter from a debt collection agency addressed to Alexandra. He owed someone a lot of money. The debt collection letter was dated just 3 weeks before Alexandra's first visit to Grandma. According to the notice, he owed $50,000 to a casino and faced legal action if he didn't pay immediately. "So that's why he suddenly started caring about Grandma's property," Mia said. "He needed money fast." I photographed everything with my phone, making sure to capture all the details. This was evidence that Alexandra had a clear financial motive for pressuring Grandma to change her will. But we still needed to prove that he had actually coerced her. The debt gave him a reason, but we needed proof of his actions. "What about that mysterious lawyer Mrs. Anderson mentioned?" Mia suggested. "Maybe he wasn't a real lawyer at all." That was a brilliant idea. I pulled out my phone and called Mr. Patterson, the lawyer who had read the will to me. "Mr. Patterson, can you tell me who witnessed my grandmother's will when she signed it?" There was a pause. "Actually, that's unusual. The witnesses listed aren't people I recognize from our usual staff." Mr. Patterson's words sent chills down my spine. In our state, wills needed to be witnessed by 2 people who weren't beneficiaries. If the witnesses were fake or paid off, the entire will could be invalid. "Can you give me their names?" I asked. "Let me check. Jonathan Mills and Tracy Coleman. But I'm starting to wonder if these signatures are legitimate. Now that I look more closely, something seems off about this whole document." After hanging up, I immediately researched the witness names online. Jonathan Mills was easy to find. He worked at the same casino where Alexandra owed money. Tracy Coleman was harder to track down, but eventually I found her listed as an employee at a document preparation service. "They're both connected to Alexandra's debt situation," I told Mia excitedly. "This is starting to look like fraud." But I still needed to find the smoking gun direct proof that Alexandra had forced Grandma to sign against her will. We continued searching through her papers, hoping to find something that would expose the truth once and for all. As we searched the house more thoroughly, I remembered something Grandma had told me years ago about a secret compartment behind the bookshelf in her study. She had shown it to me once when I was little, saying it was where she kept her most precious things. I ran my hands along the bookshelf until I felt a loose panel. When I pressed it, a small section swung open, revealing a hidden space behind the wall. Inside was a metal box containing old jewelry, some cash, and a thick manila envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. The envelope contained multiple documents, but one made my heart race. A handwritten letter from Grandma to me, dated just 1 month before she died. "My dearest Tara," it began. "If you're reading this, something has happened to me and Alexandra has probably stolen your inheritance. I want you to know that I never willingly changed my will. Alexandra threatened me and brought scary men to force me to sign papers I didn't understand." I could barely breathe as I read Grandma's letter aloud to Mia. Her handwriting was shaky but clear. "Alexandra brought a man who said he was a lawyer, but I don't think he was real. They told me terrible things would happen to you if I didn't sign new papers. They said I was confused and old, and that no one would believe me if I told anyone. I was so scared, Tara. I tried to call you, but Alexandra took my phone away. I'm hiding this letter where only you would think to look. I pray you'll find it and know the truth. The house should be yours, sweetheart. You're the only one who truly loved it and understood what it meant to our family. There are more papers hidden in the basement behind the old furnace. Look for a loose brick. Those papers will prove what really happened. I love you so much. Please don't let Alexandra win." Mia and I stared at each other in shock. This letter was exactly the proof I needed. But there was more evidence hidden in the basement. We rushed down to the basement, flashlights in hand. The old furnace sat in the corner, surrounded by decades of stored furniture and boxes. I examined the brick wall behind it carefully, pressing each brick until I found one that wiggled loose. Behind the loose brick was another small space containing a plastic bag. Inside were photocopies of documents that made my jaw drop. The first was a contract showing that Alexandra had hired someone named Vincent Torres from Professional Document Services to create a fake will. The second was a recording device, an old cassette player with a tape still inside. "Oh my gosh, Tara," Mia whispered. "Your grandma recorded them." With shaking hands, I pressed play. Grandma's frightened voice filled the basement. "Please, Alexandra, I don't want to change my will. Tara deserves the house." Then Alexandra's angry voice. "You'll sign this, or I'll make sure something bad happens to that girl. Vincent here knows people who can make problems go away, if you know what I mean." We had him. We had proof of everything. The recording was devastating evidence of Alexandra's threats and coercion. But as I listened to the entire tape, it got even worse. Vincent Torres, the fake lawyer, was clearly coaching Alexandra on how to manipulate Grandma. "Remember, you have to make her believe she's protecting the girl by signing," Vincent said on the recording. "Elderly people are easy to confuse when they're scared." The tape also revealed that they had forged the witness signatures using people Alexandra knew from the casino. It was a complete fraud from start to finish. I had everything I needed to prove that Alexandra had stolen my inheritance through threats and deception. But now I had to decide what to do with this evidence. Mia suggested we call the police immediately, but I had a better idea. Alexandra thought he was so clever that he had outsmarted everyone. He had no idea that Grandma was brave enough to document his crimes. I wanted him to face the consequences, but I also wanted him to know that he had underestimated both Grandma Rose and me. That night I couldn't sleep as I planned my next steps. I had solid evidence of fraud, coercion, and elder abuse. The fake will would be invalidated, and Alexandra would face serious criminal charges. But first I wanted to confront him directly. He deserved to know that his victims had outsmarted him. I called Alexandra the next morning, keeping my voice steady and normal. "Hi, Alexandra. I wanted to let you know I finished going through Grandma's things. I found some interesting items in her study and basement." "Oh? Just old junk, I assume," he said dismissively. "Actually, I found some documents and recordings that I think you'd be very interested in. Would you like to meet at the house this afternoon to see them?" There was a long pause. "What kind of recordings? Why don't you come by at 3 p.m. and find out? Bring Vincent Torres with you. I think he'll want to hear this too." The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Alexandra was starting to panic. Alexandra arrived at the house exactly at 3 p.m., but Vincent Torres was nowhere to be seen. Alexandra looked nervous as he walked into Grandma's living room where I was waiting with all the evidence spread across the coffee table. "What's all this about, Tara?" he asked, but his voice betrayed his fear. "Sit down, Alexandra. We need to talk about what you did to Grandma Rose." I pressed play on the cassette player. His own voice filled the room, threatening Grandma and coaching Vincent on how to manipulate her. Alexandra's face went pale as he listened to himself committing multiple felonies. That's not what it sounds like, he stammered. We were just helping her organize her affairs. I held up Grandma's handwritten letter. Really? Because Grandma wrote down exactly what happened. She was terrified of you, Alexandra. You threatened her and scared an elderly woman into signing away her most precious possession. Alexandra slumped into the chair, realizing he had been caught completely. What do you want? He whispered. I looked at Alexandra sitting there, defeated and exposed. Part of me felt sorry for him, but then I remembered Grandma's frightened voice on that recording. Here's what's going to happen, I said firmly. First, you're going to call Mr. Patterson and confess that the will was obtained through fraud. Second, you're going to pay back every penny you owe to the casino using your own money, not Grandma's estate. Alexandra started to protest, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. Third, you're going to write a full confession explaining exactly how you coerced Grandma into signing that fake will. And fourth, you're going to seek help for your gambling addiction. And if I do all that, he asked quietly, then I might consider not pressing criminal charges immediately. But Alexandra, if you ever try to contest Grandma's real will or cause any more problems for this family, I'll take all this evidence straight to the police and the district attorney. Alexandra nodded slowly, understanding that he had no choice but to accept my terms. Alexandra's confession was written on Grandma's kitchen table, the same place where she had taught me to bake cookies and told me stories about our family history. There was something fitting about him facing the consequences of his actions in that sacred space. His written statement detailed everything. How his gambling debts had driven him to desperation, how he had hired Vincent Torres to create fake documents, and how he had threatened and manipulated Grandma into signing against her will. I want you to know, Alexandra said as he finished writing. I never meant for things to go this far. The debt collectors were threatening me and I panicked. That doesn't excuse what you did to her, I replied. Grandma trusted you, and you used her love for me as a weapon against her. Alexandra called Mr. Patterson from Grandma's old rotary phone and confessed everything. The lawyer was shocked but promised to begin the process of invalidating the fraudulent will immediately. As Alexandra prepared to leave, he turned back to me. Tara, I know you'll never forgive me, but I hope someday you'll understand that I was desperate. Understanding and forgiving are two different things, Alexandra. Within 2 weeks, Mr. Patterson had successfully invalidated Alexandra's fraudulent will and restored Grandma's original document. The house, along with all of Grandma's other assets, officially belonged to me. But more importantly, the district attorney's office had opened an investigation into Vincent Torres and his professional document services. It turned out that Alexandra wasn't their only victim. They had been running elder fraud schemes across 3 counties. The recording I found had become key evidence in a much larger case. Detective Wilson, who was leading the investigation, called to thank me for coming forward. Your grandmother's courage in recording that conversation is helping us shut down this entire operation, she said. Vincent Torres and his associates are facing serious federal charges for elder abuse and fraud. I felt proud knowing that Grandma's bravery would protect other elderly people from becoming victims of the same scheme. Meanwhile, Alexandra had indeed sought help for his gambling addiction and was working to pay back his casino debts using money from his savings account, not from Grandma's estate. Now that the house was legally mine, I could finally focus on honoring Grandma's memory. The first thing I did was change all the locks. Alexandra would never set foot in this house again without my permission. I spent my spring break cleaning and organizing every room, remembering all the times Grandma and I had worked together on various projects. In the kitchen, I found her handwritten recipe cards and decided to frame some of my favorites. Mia helped me restore Grandma's garden, planting the same flowers she had loved, roses, lavender, and sunflowers. We also repaired the old greenhouse where she had started seedlings every winter. This place is coming back to life, Mia observed as we painted the front porch railing. She was right. The house had felt sad and neglected during those terrible weeks when Alexandra controlled it. Now it felt warm and welcoming again, just like when Grandma was alive. I decided to keep the house and eventually move in after graduation. It would become my permanent home and a lasting tribute to Grandma Rose's memory. As word spread about Alexandra's fraud scheme, I was surprised by how many people reached out to support me. Mrs. Anderson brought over casseroles and helped me organize Grandma's extensive book collection. Other NEI. Even more surprising was a call from Vincent Torres's other victims. An elderly man named Harold and his daughter Patricia had been tricked into signing over their family farm using the same tactics Alexandra had used on Grandma. "Your evidence helped us get our property back too," Patricia explained over the phone. "The recording your grandmother made proved that Vincent used identical threats against my father." I realized that Grandma's courage had helped more people than I had ever imagined. By documenting Alexandra's crimes, she had exposed an entire network of criminals who preyed on vulnerable elderly people. Detective Wilson later told me that my case had led to arrests in 5 different states. Vincent Torres was facing decades in prison, and several other fake lawyers and document preparers had been shut down. 3 months after I exposed the fraud, Alexandra faced the full consequences of his actions. The district attorney decided to press charges despite his cooperation, arguing that elder abuse crimes needed to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Alexandra pled guilty to fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy charges. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison and 5 years of probation. He also had to pay substantial fines and restitution to cover the legal costs of invalidating the fake will. The casino debt that had started this whole mess had been paid off using Alexandra's retirement savings, leaving him financially ruined. His wife had filed for divorce, and his 2 adult children had cut off contact with him completely. I felt no satisfaction in Alexandra's downfall. He had brought it entirely on himself through his choices. All I felt was sadness that Grandma's final months had been tainted by fear and manipulation. But I also felt proud that justice had been served. Grandma Rose could rest in peace knowing that her courage had protected not only her own legacy, but countless other elderly people from falling victim to similar schemes. 6 months later, I was settling into my new routine of living in Grandma's house during summers and school breaks. I had converted her study into a homework space where I could honor her memory, while focusing on my education. The house had become a gathering place for family and friends again. I hosted Thanksgiving dinner for the first time, using Grandma's china, and following her recipes exactly. Mrs. Anderson joined us, along with several neighbors who had been Grandma's close friends. "She would be so proud of you," Mrs. Anderson said as we cleared dishes after the meal. "You not only saved her house but turned it back into a home full of love and laughter." I had also started a small scholarship fund in Grandma's name for students interested in historic preservation. The first recipient was a girl from my school who wanted to study architecture and specialize in restoring old buildings. Every morning, I spent time in Grandma's garden, talking to her roses and remembering her wisdom. The house felt peaceful now, filled with positive memories instead of the shadow of Alexandra's crimes. While organizing the attic last month, I made an amazing discovery. Hidden in an old trunk were dozens of photographs and documents dating back to the 1800s, chronicling our family's history in incredible detail. Among the papers was the original deed to the house from 1892, signed by my great-great-grandmother. There were also letters between family members, business records, and even some Civil War correspondence. I realized that Grandma had been the keeper of our entire family legacy, not just the house itself. These documents told the story of 5 generations of strong women who had protected and preserved this property through wars, economic hardships, and family challenges. The most precious discovery was a leather journal written by my great-grandmother, describing how she had hidden important family documents during the Great Depression to keep them safe from creditors and thieves. It seems like protecting family property from greedy relatives is a recurring theme. Mia joked when I showed her the journal entries. I was amazed by the parallels between my great-grandmother's challenges and my own recent experience with Alexandra. I decided to document everything that had happened with Alexandra and the fraudulent will. My English teacher had encouraged me to enter a writing contest about overcoming challenges, and this experience had certainly qualified. Writing about Grandma's courage and Alexandra's deception was emotional but therapeutic. I wanted other people to know that elderly relatives could be vulnerable to this kind of fraud, and that families needed to watch for warning signs. My essay won first place in the state competition, earning a $2,000 scholarship for college. But more importantly, it was published in our local newspaper and shared online, raising awareness about elder abuse scams. Several families contacted me after reading the article, saying it had helped them recognize similar situations with their own elderly relatives. One woman prevented her grandfather from signing over his house to a fake financial advisor, who was using tactics identical to Vincent Torres's methods. I also started volunteering with a local organization that provided legal aid to elderly people facing financial exploitation. Grandma's experience had taught me that knowledge and documentation were the best weapons against these predators. Today marks exactly 1 year since I sat in that law office and learned I had been cut from the family will. As I write this final chapter, I'm sitting in Grandma's kitchen, baking her famous apple pie using her handwritten recipe. The house is mine now, truly and legally, but more importantly, it's once again filled with love, laughter, and the smell of home-cooked food. I've learned to maintain the old heating system and restore the hardwood floors, just as Grandma had planned to teach me. Alexandra is halfway through his prison sentence and will begin probation next year. I hear from his ex-wife occasionally. She's doing well and has started a new life far from his gambling and lies. Vincent Torres and his criminal network are still facing federal charges. The FBI tells me their investigation has prevented hundreds of elderly people from becoming victims of similar scams. But the most important outcome is that Grandma Rose's legacy lives on. Her courage in documenting Alexandra's crimes not only saved our family home, but protected countless other families from experiencing the same betrayal. Every evening, I sit on the front porch she loved so much, watching the sunset and feeling grateful for the grandmother who taught me that standing up for what's right is always worth the fight. Subscribe for more powerful revenge stories. Like, comment, and share your location.